Welcome to the Supernatural Mentoring Series, where we make the supernatural simple so that you can grow in the things of the Spirit and be even more fulfilled and effective in your faith. By far, the most requested area or topic for mentoring has been the prophetic. As you guys are reaching out to me, whether you're emailing me, messaging me, whatever, you keep asking for the prophetic, the prophetic, the prophetic. So we're going to do a lot of mentoring in the prophetic. We're actually going to do a whole series on different ways to hear from God and get you activated in those things. But in this video, what I want to do is I want to share with you where most people miss it in the prophetic so that you can avoid this trap, avoid this challenge, avoid this difficulty, and become more effective, more focused, and more on target with your prophetic ministry, with hearing God, but even more, delivering what you hear from God. But to start with, I need to cover a basic aspect of the prophetic. And that is that there's three parts to the prophetic. There's three aspects to the prophetic. There's revelation, interpretation, and application. Revelation in the prophetic is when God reveals something to you. That could be you hearing a prophetic word, receiving a vision, getting a prophetic dream, or even a highlighted scripture that you know is God sharing something with you, revealing something to you. So while there's all sorts of ways to hear from God, what revelation boils down to is that God is revealing something to you. That's where the term revelation comes from. God is revealing. He can speak it, he can show it, he can highlight it, he can quicken it. But the revelation aspect of the prophetic is God revealing something to you. The second aspect of the prophetic is interpretation. And this is where God tells you what it means. He's telling you, this is what I'm saying or showing you, and this is what it means. The third aspect of the prophetic, number one, revelation, number two, interpretation, number three is application, or what do I do with what God has revealed to me? Am I to give the word directly? Am I to publish it? Is it to go to a global audience? Is it a word for the body? So should I publish it, or should I do a video on it and release it out to the world through streaming? Or is it something I should just take to prayer? Or as I said first, maybe it's something I'm to give a person, the person in front of me, or the person God has encouraged me to give encouragement to. Maybe I should text it directly to them. But that's application. What do I do with it? So revelation, when God reveals something; interpretation, when God tells us what it means; and application, what do I do with it? So the place most people miss it when it comes to the prophetic is number two, is the interpretation, where we're not taking the time to hear from God what he means by what he's saying or what he is showing. That's the interpretation. Too often what happens is we'll interpret what God is revealing as opposed to asking him to interpret it. And that's where most people will miss it. Now, there's a bunch of reasons that this can happen. Number one is probably excitement and enthusiasm. Hey, I'm 21 years into being a Christian, 20 years in full-time prophetic ministry. I still get super excited when God shares things with me. I'm still like a kid at Christmas when God's giving me downloads or revelation or words or in visions. I get super excited about taking notes about it. And there are times I can't wait to share. So, excitement and enthusiasm is not bad. It's really good to be zealous and excited and enthusiastic. It's really good that even after all these years, we're not jaded and, I can hear from God anytime. I think it's great that we get excited about it. It means we value him. We value his voice. We value what he's sharing with us. We value our relationship. That's beautiful. However, enthusiasm and excitement, if we get so excited to share what God has shown us that we just jump out and immediately do a video or immediately text or immediately deliver the word, we're sharing the revelation, but we might be missing it on the interpretation because we haven't asked him, what do you mean by what you are sharing with me? So excitement, enthusiasm, the little bit of a trap there is we're not taking enough time to linger with God, to go that next step of, God, thank you for what you're sharing. Thank you for what you're revealing. Thank you for what you are showing. What do you mean by this? What's the interpretation of this, God? This is especially important when you flow in what they tend to call the nabby prophetic, or the sort of bubbling up, which I do a lot. And there's times even when I'm doing public prophetic ministry in meetings and I'm getting something and I start, because you're giving the word, so you start to give it. But there are times I can feel this isn't quite hitting the mark. This isn't quite landing. And I'll actually say that in public ministry in front of hundreds and hundreds of people. I'll say, I don't quite have a hold of it yet. This is what I'm seeing. This is what I'm sensing. This is what God is showing, but I haven't quite hit the mark. And I will allow then in that, even while I'm sharing with people, I kind of take it into a teaching mode, to where I'm in a mentoring mode, where I'm showing them this is how you work it when you know you're getting something, but you're also willing to admit, I can feel I haven't hit the mark yet. And then you'll often hear me in these types of situations say, there it is. And I'll all of a sudden hit the mark. Feel the mark being hit is a better way to put it. Why? Because I'm allowing the interpretation of God to become clearer and clearer. So I'm not only sharing what was shown, but I'm keeping myself out of interpreting it. Or if I, in my enthusiasm, jumped ahead, I'm willing to admit, no, that's not quite it. That's not quite hitting the mark. And we're waiting for God. I'm waiting for God. I'm circling back in the spirit, checking back in with God. What do you mean by this? And when you're a knobby prophet and things bubble up and flow, I think that's okay, because you're not saying, oh, no, I'm the perfect expression of God. And I think we're mentoring, and this is how we connect with God. This is how we flow with God. This is how we hear from God. This is how we share what God reveals. And this is how we get a hold of it in fullness. So one of the other reasons we can miss it in interpretation is a biggie. It's assumption. We assume we know what God means. So he reveals, he shows, he speaks. He bubbles up, he highlights, we're receiving it, we know it's from him, and then we assume what it means. It's, oh, I know what it means, as opposed to, oh Lord, what are you saying in this? What are you revealing? What's on your heart? What do you mean in this? And there's a very important difference between, oh, I know what this means, which sometimes we will, but we never want that to be our default. We never want that to be our pattern of, okay, God has shown me this. I know what that means, and then give the interpretation. It's always a good idea, even when, maybe especially when we really think we know what it means, to check in with God and not be, oh, I know what that means. Be, oh Lord, what are you saying? Oh Lord, what do you mean? Oh Lord, what does this mean? It's a great question to be asking God. And then one of the other ways we can get tripped up in the interpretation aspect is we can be literal when God is being metaphorical. We can be taking something literal that he's showing, revealing, highlighting. We get very, very literal about it when God's being very, very, very metaphorical about it. Or I guess you could do the opposite as well. We could assume it's metaphorical when God's being literal. Let me give you an example from when I was first stepping out in prophetic ministry. I have taught a lot of our prophetic schools, and we have our prophetic boot camp where we make the prophetic simple and easy. And I mentor you in how to hear God's voice, lots of activations in it. They're really, really fun 2-day workshop seminars. But then we also do the school of extreme prophetic, which is all about taking the extreme love of Jesus to extreme places. And it's about getting the prophetic outside the church to people who won't come to church. And I love those schools and I love those outreaches. And I was a part of one of those. I was co-teaching one of them with somebody else, and we were on a dinner break. And one of the things we were doing was, when we do the dinner breaks, we go into activations and we talk about, take that time to prophesy over your waiter or waitress, or over the host or hostess of the restaurant, or over people at another table. Be respectful of their time, be respectful of their work duties and their workflow, but you can write down on a napkin prophetic words, but be seeking God for those words. Well, we had a great young guy who was our waiter and we were doing this around the table. And when it came to me, he came back, and I can't remember his name. He had a Russian name. He had immigrated from Russia to Las Vegas. We were in Las Vegas doing the school, and his name was I can't remember. But he had, and I said to him, "Hey, God's showing me something for you." And what I saw was a television that was like jammed in between channels. Now, for those of you who aren't as old as I am, you don't remember this, but when I was a kid, there was actually a clicker dial that you turned to there were 3 different channels, the 3 or 5 different channels when I grew up, the 3 VHF networks and 2 UHF networks. We had 5 channels, and you had to turn the dials to get there. And if you didn't turn the dial far enough and it got stuck, you had like the sort of white noise pattern and sound on your TV because you were stuck between stations. And so I'm seeing a picture of this in the spirit. And I say to him, I'm seeing a picture of a television that's stuck between channels. And, God knows everything about us. So your television's broken. And he looks at me and he goes, no, it's not. I don't own a television. I don't watch television. So no. And he walked away, kind of with this attitude of, I knew this God stuff wasn't real. So it was like the second school of extreme prophetic I've ever been involved in. Now I've done them for 20 years. I've done dozens and dozens of them. But you know what? I don't care if you're a student, if you're a teacher, whatever it is. We're all learning all the time. So I took some time and I checked in with God. I was like, God, obviously I missed it. And really what it boiled down to is I was being literal. God was being metaphorical. God was saying to me, no, I wasn't telling you his television is stuck in between channels. I'm telling you, it's like he's stuck in between channels, and things that used to work for him, like intuition and other things, aren't working anymore. And he feels stuck. And it's because I'm jamming those signals because I want him to learn to hear from me and receive from me. I want to reveal myself to him. All he has to do is ask me to. And I was like, oh, so I got up from the table. He was on not a break, but he was waiting for like the next thing. And I walked up to him and I said, hey, I want to apologize. I'm still learning to hear from God. And I was just seeking him right now on your behalf. And I shared with him. I said, you know what? I was being so literal about what he showed me. When I checked back in with him, I realized he was speaking metaphorically, and this is what's going on. And the guy said, oh my gosh, that's exactly what's going on. So I got to share with him more and pray with him more. So here's the thing. There's different reasons we can miss it. The main place we miss it is in the interpretation because of excitement and enthusiasm, or we assume we know what it means, or because something like we're being literal when God's being metaphorical, or vice versa. But one of the things I want you to remember is that missing it is never a tragic error if you remain humble and teachable. And again, 21 years in prophetic ministry. I'm a fairly respected prophetic voice around the world. I've prophesied over world leaders. I've prophesied over poor people in the streets. I've sent out prophetic words via video all over the world. I've sent out prophetic words via things like the Elijah list all over the world. But I'm the first to admit I'm still learning. And I want to learn and I want to grow. And every time I miss it or don't quite hit the mark, if that happens, I should say when that happens, because it does, I want to be humble and teachable. And just like in that restaurant in Las Vegas, I want to go to the Lord and say, well, I obviously missed something. What was it? But we start doing that by realizing missing it is not a tragic error. Missing it is the opportunity to check back in with God. Remember, every stage of the prophetic is about relationship. Everything about God is about relationship. Everything he did for us through the finished work of the cross is because he wants relationship with us. The prophetic is about relationship. He says, my sheep, the sheep that belong to me, the sheep in relationship with me, hear my voice. When we remember this isn't a performance test, but it's a relationship opportunity. Now the prophetic isn't this mantle I must wear, office I must inhabit, nearly so much as an aspect of our intimate relationship with him. Revelation is the part of the relationship where we're spending time with him. We're lingering with him. We're turning our ear to him because his voice matters. What's on his heart matters. What's on his mind matters. And we want to know it. We want to share in that because we love him and are embracing relationship with him. Once he reveals something, well, then interpretation is the opportunity to press back into that place of relationship and connection, to linger a little longer in his presence and say, Lord, thank you for showing this to me. What does it mean? What are you getting at? What are you saying in this? This is what I thought, God. But I want to know your thought. I want to know what's on your heart in regards to this. And same with application. It's an opportunity to then go even deeper into that place of intimacy and connection and say, all right, Lord, thank you for revealing this. Thank you for sharing with me what it means. What do you want to do? What's your plan for this? Do you want me to give this word directly? Do you want me to call this person or text this person? Do you want me to broadcast this word via the internet or streaming media or some other way? Or is this something you want me to hold in my heart and intercede for passionately on your behalf and on behalf of this person or the nation or whatever it is you're showing me? But you see how every single stage of the prophetic is about relationship, intimacy, and connection. When we get that, even if we miss it, then it's not a tragic error. It's an invitation to go deeper into that place of intimacy and connection, connecting to his thoughts, connecting to his heart, connecting to his plans, purposes, and desires. It's beautiful. When we do that, we can't fail in the prophetic. We can simply go deeper and deeper into that place of connection. And if you miss it, admit you missed it. And then if you can, go and clean it up like I did with the Russian waiter in Las Vegas. Same thing if you put out a word publicly and it completely misses. Well, that's not a tragic error. You're not a false prophet. Don't let ego or pride get involved. So realize this could be an opportunity to mentor the entire body of Christ in how to go deeper into the prophetic and the opportunities in relationship with God that the prophetic is a part of. So if you miss it, don't see it so much as a tragic error, nearly so much as a chance to reconnect with him, ask questions of him, and go deeper in your relationship with him. And then one last thing I want to give you is a great example of how this can look. As many of you know, in this season, God's had me reading, and rereading the book of Daniel. There's so much wisdom in it for us right now, so many strategies for us right now. But one of the things when I was doing this that really hit me is like, oh, here's a great example in Daniel 7. Daniel, a seasoned prophet, right? Seasoned in hearing from the Lord for like national level solutions, right? What we see in Daniel 1 and Daniel 2. Well, here he is in Daniel 7, and it says, in the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel saw a dream and visions in his mind as he lay on his bed. This is old hat for Daniel. This is standard ministry for Daniel, but this is what I found fascinating. In Daniel 7, verse 2, Daniel spoke, saying, I saw. So he starts massaging what he saw. Daniel 7, 4, he says, I watched until. Daniel 7, 6, after this I looked and there was. Daniel 7, 9, again, I watched until. Daniel 7, 11, I watched. Daniel 7, 13, I kept looking. Daniel 7, 16, and began asking the exact meaning of all this. So here we are for 16 verses of Daniel receiving revelation, but lingering in that and peering deeper and seeking God's heart more and God's thoughts more. And then when it came to interpretation, he, even as seasoned a prophet as he was, and all the time he took lingering in the revelation, looking more and more into what God was showing him, spending more and more time with God in that revelation, he still asks, what is the exact meaning of all this? He asks of heaven, what does this mean? And then he knows what it means, what it is, what it means, and what to do with it. That's a great example. And I hope this helps you as we begin some mentoring in the prophetic that you guys have asked for. The where most people miss it in the prophetic is in interpretation, but that's not a tragic error. It's actually a glorious opportunity to really go back in, linger back in the place of revelation so there can be clarification in that, and absolutely the place of interpretation so there can be clarification not of what I thought this means, but what God means when he shares those things. And then obviously we also want to linger in that place until we understand and can feel God's heart and God's thoughts and God's strategies for application. So there you go. That's where most people miss it in the prophetic. And if you catch this, you won't miss it there. You'll actually learn to go deeper into relationship and get clearer and clearer interpretations. If you're hungry for more of the supernatural, you don't have to wait for the next supernatural mentoring series video. I recommend you go and get a copy of my new book, Realms of Power, Operating in Untapped Dimensions of Holy Spirit Power, today. You can get it through roberthotchkin.com, amazon.com, barnesandnoble.com. You can go to your local bookstore, and if they don't have it on the shelf, they'll order it in for you. And if you happen to like ebooks, well, you can get a Kindle edition from Amazon, or you can get an iBook edition from Apple Books. But anywhere in the world, you can get a copy, either a hard copy or a digital copy, an ebook copy of Realms of Power. And it'll open up 12 different supernatural realms of power in the Holy Spirit to you. Every single chapter is about another realm, shows you scripturally what you have, and gives you keys on how to begin to move in it so you can start establishing these realms in your life and in the earth through your life. There are things like the power of faith, the power to work miracles, the power to shift atmosphere, the power of tongues, the power of decree, the power to create wealth, and so much more. Get your copy of Realms of Power and start moving in the supernatural aspects of your Christian faith today.